right. Good evening. How are you doing? Good. Couple thumbs up. Any more thumbs up? There we go. Thumbs up. Come on in. Make your way. We are so happy that you are here. Thank you for taking the time to be here. We are going to try to entertain you for the next 3 hours. Not quite. Not 3 hours, but for a little bit. We're calling this our Uganda night. We went on a mission trip a couple of weeks ago. Has it been that long already? Yeah. And we came back in one piece, which was good. We didn't know, but having been there now, and I will talk a little bit about the place. I wouldn't have any reservations of having any of you go with us if the Lord wills us to go back. And we'll talk more about that. But we decided not to have a time of worship necessarily, but we do have worship Ugandan style. So I want to introduce who I have with me here. This is Drew Hoglund. You guys know Drew, and then Jonah. Actually, before we start, Jonah owes me some cows, and I have to tell you about the cows. Okay, I found out that in Uganda, and maybe in other parts of Africa, but for sure in Uganda, when you are going to marry a young lady, you pay in cows. You still pay in cows, and so Peter was telling us, hey, I paid 10 cows for my wife, and I didn't want to ask whether that was good or bad. Is that like, I don't know. Yeah, what's the discount or what is it? But I never got cows, and so I'm still trying to find out if there is a clause within the cow giving where I can still claim cows, even though he claims it's expired. But I'll take it in ribeye steaks. How's that? I don't want cows. A couple of freezers. Yes. So cows. Think about that, young men. If you're single, you gotta pay in cows. So here's what we're gonna do. We're going to begin with a short video, and then we want to give you an overview of our trip, a few things, and then we're gonna show you a video from Pastor Peter. Drew was this in that place there in Entebbe where you did okay, yeah, we were in a botanical garden, and they went off and they shot this video to get Peter's heart of his ministry, and then also the ministry to the Karamoja people, which Drew will tell us more about, and then we want to give you kind of a day by day of what we did. This is 100% interactive, so at any point you are welcome to raise your hand and ask any question relating to this, okay? Don't ask me like, can God make a rock big enough that he can't move? And so don't do weird stuff like that, okay? And so, yeah, so anything that pertains to our trip, you're welcome to ask it. Even if it's not what we're talking about, you have a question, please answer it. We want to try to answer all of that. And so, should we start with our first? So this is worship in Uganda. Pretty much all of this, right? This is all worship in Uganda. I don't know if we want to kill the lights a little bit, and you guys can see it a little bit better, and we'll give it some volume. So let's let it roll.
Enjoy your blessings, problems no ending. Me, I enjoy my blessings, problems no ending. The King Music.
Patenda no lichalia jagala kusasanya got my money keep the balance little things every day my party my holiday blessings them follow me my God my everyday ezalandi road nazijeko echimwe chekumi na chijeko ezakameza nazijeko sina bimanja.
Enjoy your blessings, problems no ending. Oh, oh. Me, I enjoy my blessings. Problems no ending.
ngenda byatula bwalero siyinza kusirika ngenda byogera onange mumpezi peso lwalero sirina sitresi ono kwena senga lwaza kuba lipeya kove kifesi amenipa zote 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 baraka zote 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 enjoy your blessings problems no ending. Oh, oh. Me, I enjoy my blessings. Problems no ending. Oh, oh. Jagala kubape, nase kubape. Jagala kulia bate. Yes, wali wa monange. Nega sirins every day. My party, my holiday. Blessings them follow me, my God, my everyday. Esalandi road na zijeko, echimwe chekumi na chijeko. Esakameza na zijeko, sina bimanja. Enjoy your blessings, problems no ending.
That's him and the guy next to him is
Me, I enjoy my blessings,
their pastors and cowboys.
problems no ending. Swali wa munange enjoy your blessings problems no ending.
All right. So yeah. So some of the even the moves and the music, it may seem provocative to us, but it's not to them. It's just not. Music and dancing is in their being. It's who they are, right? It's, in fact, Drew confirmed that even the Calvary Chapel there dances. We had to ask. We visited it on our last day. We'll talk about it. But Drew asked, do you guys dance? And what did he say? He said, yes. Okay, so we got there and we were dancing from the minute we got there. I didn't do a lot of dancing, but I was dancing in my heart. Go ahead. Yeah, and you guys could talk at any time. Okay, we're like the three amigos. I said we were the three little pigs, and then when we got there, like Peter had another one, right? He said, the Lord brought us the three wise men, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
The funny thing is, I was talking to somebody. Is this thing? I don't think.
Let me see.
Yeah, it's all.
Oh, let me see.
Check, check.
There you go.
Okay, now it's turned on?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, that's right. They called us the three wise men, or Peter did. So we were like, okay, well, I wouldn't call ourselves that, but
No,
yeah.
no. We were not the three wise men.
I think just one other note on the dancing bit, and I'm glad you clarified that. Because, yeah, like when you go to Uganda, much like probably in some ways when you go to Mexico or any foreign country or missions, like you have to throw out so many preconceived notions of your culture.
Yeah.
And, because what those girls were doing there was they were basically doing their version of traditional Ugandan dance.
Tribal dance.
Tribal dancing, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing. It's very family orientated. It's very much community based, and everything about them is the way you emphasize the moving of your hips. That's just how they dance, and you see men and women doing it both. And so you may look at that and be like, oh well, what is that? But it's when you see it in the context of the culture, it's completely different. The other thing that really took me by surprise is one day we had, I know we're kind of off script here, but
You're good.
one little thing was that we had a music workshop and we were going around talking about, what it means to be in music ministry. And as we went around the group, people would identify themselves as, oh, I'm a singer, I'm a choir member, or I'm a band member. And those were both familiar roles to us. And then certain people would say, my ministry is dance. Like they didn't say I'm a dancer and a singer. They said I'm a dancer, and you see that there. Like literally, that's what they do. When there's because in every service there's always dancing. There's dancing at the beginning, and then there's dancing in the middle, and then there's dancing in the end, and then you have lunch after church with everybody, and then they dance some more, and then you take a break, and then they make a dance circle and drag the white boys in there and make us dance, and then they so it's just it truly is integral into everything. That's why I thought it was so important I thought, man, people have to see the dancing because it was such a thing, and people feel called to it where they'll just go up and they feel like they're leading in worship by just moving their body.
Yeah, we've unfortunately we're the ones who have perverted a lot of that stuff, right?
That's a good point.
It wasn't like that, and we one of the nights we went further on in our time to what would you call it? Nadere. What is it?
It's a cultural center. It's not Christian. It's a cultural center that preserves traditional African. Let me be more specific.
Music?
Traditional Ugandan tribal dancing and percussion and singing.
And it was amazing. And if we go back, we'll take you there. That was that's a must on a trip.
Yeah.
Because you see all of that, and you see the men shaking their hips more than the women can. Sometimes you're like, how in the world did he do that?
Yeah.
I could never do that, but that's what they do. And so, so music is important, dance is important. It's the way, it's part of worship for them. But it wasn't weird, I'm not a big dancer, and yet I found myself moving just all the time because it's just infectious.
Yeah.
And there's a joy that comes with it. And they're not putting on a show. They're not there to put on a show. So, some of what you saw was some of those, like the two guys that were kind of popping, I'm not sure what they were doing. That was a performance that they put on for us, the Americans, the Mizungus. I'm a Mizungu, we're a Bazungu. We're plural, right? And so if there's more than one. Yep. And so they put that on for us. So they don't normally do all of those things on a Sunday morning, but worship is dance, a lot of dance with it. And so we left on a Sunday on a 22-hour trip, and so we left. What did Jonah? That is your longest time you've ever been on an airplane. How was that for you?
It was definitely an adjustment. And I think a lot of people were asking, like, how did I adjust to, like, the sleep over there? And I think the plane ride helped because I barely slept on the plane. So when I got there, I was ready to go on Ugandan time.
Yes.
But it was long. It was definitely long. And when you got there, it was like, okay, we're ready to go.
Yeah. What about the place? I want to talk about Kampala, about Uganda as a whole. What struck you guys about the place, the land? We'll talk about the people in a minute, but just right now, the land, the
I'd
place.
say the first thing that came to mind is just how busy it is. The city that we were in was probably I'd say like a quarter of San Antonio. It wasn't
in size, yeah,
in
not very
size.
big.
It wasn't that big in space, but it had 4 million people like living inside it, and I think San Antonio has 7?
2.5?
2.5? Yeah. So
million?
it was very like compact, and you felt it in the driving and in the walking and everything. So there was just so many people there. Yeah. That was a big thing. And the area, it's the capital of Uganda, and it's supposed to be like where all like the business is, and so everyone flocks to that city. And you could definitely see there were nicer parts of the city, and then there were other areas where the normal was like living in shacks and stuff. And it was just very, for someone who had never been outside the country before, it was very like eye-opening. It was very eye-opening.
We have pictures that we'll show as we talk through the days. So you'll see my reaction was like, I mean, I've been to third world countries, I've been to developing countries. You know, I spent a lot of time in Mexico, both in Mexico City and some at the border. And this is different. This is a different level of developing country. I'll just put it that way. I actually didn't really like. Well, so just stepping back, where is Uganda? We probably should have put up a map of that. And Uganda, if you know what Africa looks like, right? Uganda, you can think of it like directly in the middle, right in the middle. It's right west of Kenya. It's right east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So Winston Churchill, this is a former British colony. So they drive on the left side of the road. They speak British English. So they have an African accent with a British accent to it, which has been sort of metamorphosized over the years. It's directly on the equator.
Yes.
It's directly, so the sun comes up at 7 a.m. every single day, 365 days a year, and it goes down at 7 p.m. every single day, 365 days a year. The weather is always 85 degrees, and they have a rainy season and a not rainy season, and that's it. That's the weather. So you deal with perfect weather. You're dealing with great land. I personally didn't like Kampala. You had the constant smell of exhaust in your nose and almost in your mouth. It's worse than Mexico City. It's worse than any other. New York City, the traffic is unfathomably crowded and difficult to navigate. Not only are you dealing with driving on the left side of the road, but you're dealing with bodabodas. What are bodabodas?
Bodabodas.
Motorcycles.
Hundreds and hundreds of them.
Everywhere.
Thousands, I would have to say. Thousands.
Thank God we didn't have to drive.
Yes.
We had a driver the whole time. So that
You
was
did drive a little bit
on a dirt road.
on a
did,
dirt
yeah.
road in the garden. He took us off-roading.
Jonah
That was
almost
pretty
thought
good.
he was going to die.
And what's crazy is like and I'm sure we'll have like a video of like the road and everything. And the first day it was very like crazy, and you felt like you were gonna get into a car crash.
Yes.
But after the second day, you get used to it very, very much, and it just becomes normal. It's like, okay, I'm used to people cutting lanes and stopping in the middle of the road for no reason, and literally hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles. I think that was the top business there, was like motorcycle repair, just because of how many there were.
Yeah, so motorcycles are the bodas are, which the way I remembered it is that, you know, I'm thinking in Spanish always. So boda is like a wedding, so it's wedding, and so it's boda is what it is. And so it's their transportation, it's their taxis, it's how people get around. So you can be in dressed to the nines, and you're in the back of a motorcycle going to your wedding or somewhere, you know, because it's the way people get. It's the only way to get around. There's cars, but it is so difficult. There's no driving culture there. The lights are optional. And nobody. We saw one accident the entire time we were there, and it was two cars. But I thought that we'd see motorcycles just strewn all over the road, and people just in need of help, and nothing. Nobody ever got in an accident. They just know how to do it. It is, and I don't know if we have any video of our some of the streets that we have some, so you'll see it. But the place is. Kampala is amazing. We spent time in the big city, but then we also went outside into some other towns. Jinja was one of them, and when you get out into Jinja, or Maya is another town where Pastor Peter lives. It's just beautiful. It's Africa like you would envision it. At least in that area, it's mountainous. It's very green. It's very lush. We'll show you pictures of the land that they bought. It's like a pine forest in Africa. Who knew there were pine forests in Africa? And it's just a patch of pine trees. There's nothing like it's just amazing. The dirt is red, like red, really red. Your shoes are probably still stained. Like red rocks, like that, but everywhere. Like it's all red. So when it rains, which it rains, we got some rain. It's muddy and it's red mud. And so that's the area. Yeah, I was worried about mosquitoes. We didn't see a lot of mosquitoes. Did you guys get eaten up? I didn't. I mean, it was
I
wild.
brought mosquito spray.
I brought it, and I don't know that I really used it. So our beds where we stayed did have nets, like over, so that you can. And the first night I was figuring out how to sleep in this thing. I felt like I was in a spider web. And then I thought, what am I doing? I did. Wait. Oh, am I confessing something here? You used it every night.
I probably should have. Yeah.
Well, I didn't need it after night one. I'm not getting any sleep, so I got rid of the thing. The people. How about the people of Uganda? What can we say about the people themselves?
Well, I mean, beautiful people, beautiful, welcoming, friendly. The people of the church, just amazing. I mean, I think the one interesting observation I think that Hector and I had our first day is that people there are quite serious. Like, you know, and Jonah's gonna tease me. I used to live in New York City, and people there are very tough. But there's a difference between toughness and serious. And people in San Antonio are just plain friendly. This is a very friendly town. You go to Uganda, I would describe the people as serious. Like when you talk to them in a crowd of people, their faces are very serious. But behind that seriousness is a friendliness and a warmth and a welcoming. So the interesting thing is I almost felt bad making that observation.
Yeah.
Because how's that going to come across? And then like the next night, we were having a conversation with Pastor Peter. And he was making some point about something that he's trying to convey to his discipleship, his missional communities.
Yes.
He's like, I'm trying to teach them about not being so serious. And at first I was like, what is he talking about? Because I'm thinking, man, in America we need the exact opposite. We need our Christians to be more serious about the gospel. We need to be more serious about this. And then I realized, oh, this isn't America. That's like a problem that he's addressing in the culture of Uganda. People are too serious there. He's trying to teach them how to express their joy more and to come out of that serious shell. And it was so funny because I was like, wow, that's exactly what Hector and I observed, but I was a little bit afraid I wasn't going to say anything until he
brought it up.
It up. I was like, whoa, that's a confirmation of what we observed.
Yes. Yeah. What do you think, Jonah? What did you perceive of the people?
I definitely saw that aspect of like their personality of being very serious. It was one of those things to where they come off super serious, and then you almost have to like peel back that layer.
Yeah.
And then they're super super humorous and just very very welcoming. The church itself was very 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 welcoming, and it caught me by surprise just because we were talking about the way the city looks and like how different it is from the United States. And for someone who's lived in the States their whole life, you look at that and you're like, man, they don't have a lot of what we would consider to be necessities. Yeah. And yet they still have this like joy about them. And it was very convicting for myself, because it was just like, okay, if they can have joy without all of these things, why can't I if I get stuck behind someone in traffic? Like, so it was, I definitely noticed that as well.
It's interesting you mentioned joy, because I just read an article this morning, sharing it with Drew a minute ago, about it just came out, the world's top 10 most happiest places to live in the world. Okay, and so the bottom half, or the unhappiest, out of the bottom 10, 8 of them are in Africa. But it says that the World Happiness Report rankings, whatever that means, right? Like, how do you determine that? Well, let me tell you how they determine happiness. It is based on income, on a healthy life expectancy, social support, freedom to make life choices, generosity, and a freedom from corruption. None of which they have in Kampala. And yet, they are the most joyous people that you've ever met. Like they are, even though because that seriousness is, I think, just part of like who they are as Ugandans. But they are very joyful. At least as soon as you get into the church, you find people that have nothing, and yet they have a joy that is unexplainable. And it has nothing to do with how we would. I mean, these are things that we came back changed men because we found how spoiled we are as Americans and how ungrateful we are. At least us three, we decided that we were very ungrateful people. You guys are probably not. But we are. We found ourselves being very ungrateful, and they challenged us in a lot of ways. And so the church is extremely loving. The kids, how about the kids? They would not leave these two guys alone. I don't know if it was a combination of the beard with the hairy arms. They love hairy arms. They just would not stop pulling on our arms. The kids, they'd come around. They just love your hairy arms because they don't have hair on their arms, I guess, right? I mean, the men don't have hair on their arms. And so they just flocked to us, and we didn't have anything to offer them. We weren't, obviously, you pull out lollipops and stickers, which we did at one point, and they came even with more of a fierceness. But just to see you and to be there, they were, they, and we're talking this. There are other like Mzungus in Kampala and in Uganda, but in their church, we might have been some of the first that they've seen there. I don't know, but
I mean, that's one thing that Peter had mentioned is like the church that they have there. They've been there for 7 years, and I don't know if you're going to cover this part sometime, but in the 7 years, we were the first people to come and visit, like from outside the country. So it was something new and exciting for them, and it was something new and exciting for us too. And the kids were something else. The kids were something else. They had endless energy.
yes,
And any time we'd go to sit down, they would be like, it would turn into a mosh pit with us in the middle. And and I remember just one that comes to mind was in the trip there were two girls that just clung. One clung to Drew everywhere.
Abigail.
Abigail, and one followed me everywhere, and her name was Miracle. And just these two girls, everywhere we went, they'd always want to hold our hand and follow us around. And it was just, it was really heartwarming.
Yeah, special. I think I heard the word special. It was very special.
Yeah.
Very special. We were welcomed with open arms, and so that was our trip. The place, the people. We have a video. So we went to one mission church that is not a Calvary Chapel. It is, it's a church that came out of a Times Square church in New York City where Drew met Peter. That's where Peter had been, and actually he'll tell us a little bit about that. But that's how this church was birthed, is through a friendship between Peter and Drew when they were at the same church there in New York City. And Peter's just an amazing guy. He really is. And so Drew sat with him, and you're asking him two things here, right? In this video.
Yeah, I won't go into the details, but I had several conversations with him that made me realize he is not. I think you said it best. He's an island unto himself in a lot of ways. Through various circumstances, some of the support and connections he has had back in the United States have either just faded away or got lost in the shuffle. I don't know how else to put it. So I felt like by the end of the trip that I wanted to do something to partner with him and kind of, and so I decided, we really want to highlight the three things that I thought his church is doing and what he's building. And those three things are, one, the church itself, so one mission church. Second of all, it's specifically and with the church comes things like his church is intrinsically tied to street kid outreach. And you'll hear that in the very first part of the video, like his vision for the church is, and you see there's a lot of these young boys, like that. I don't know if you noticed the one young man who had a white T-shirt on, who was doing the dance moves in front of all the kids. That young man, for example, used to live in the street. He collected plastic for 700 shillings per kilo. And by the way, 3,900 shillings is $1. So 700 shillings is
It's
nothing.
18 cents.
Right. So that young man was pulled out of the street by Peter. And he's in the church now. He's the drummer. He's a fantastic drummer. And I was like, where did you learn how to play drums? YouTube.
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
So there's a lot of raw, untapped talent and just what God's doing. So the church tied with his outreaches in Kampala. That's number one. Number two is his vision for building a center for these kids to educate them and give them a skill. Number three is he has his own mission field. Much like we thought Kampala was our mission field, Peter has his own place, which is called Karamoja. And that's his third, and he'll go into that. So that's really what the church is about, and that's what this video is going to give you a picture of from Peter's mouth itself.
Yes, and so give it some more volume than we had in the first video, because I want you to pay close attention to the beginning of what he says, because on Wednesday I exhorted you men, and you're still here, at least most of you, so I'm grateful for that. But it's something that I was challenged by Peter, because you're going to see him, you're going to hear him pastoring his people in that first section of what he's saying. So make sure we get enough volume, because I got a lot of that from Peter, and he's younger than me. Well, I don't think I'm old enough to be his father, but I'm close. And so he just challenged me the way that he not only is he the teacher, but he's also the pastor to the people. And so let's go with this. This is about 7 minutes.
For me, my goal as a pastor is to make sure that we have more people, more young people in church, serving the Lord, passionate, more fulfilled in the Lord, in this community. Huh? There will be more cars parked here in church than at the club. We will have more disciples here. And so that's why for us, salvation is very important. Hello, my name is Peter Namawa, a Ugandan. By the grace of God, I got an opportunity to come to the US to go to Summit International School of Ministry in Pennsylvania, and I was there the year 2014 to the year 2017. And since coming back in 2017, we've been able to plant 5 churches, and right now as we talk, all the 5 churches have gotten property. Here in Kampala, our church do discipleship, reach out to people, communities, reach out to the vulnerable, impact our communities with the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. We reach out to homeless kids 3 times a week. We provide a meal, we share the gospel with them, we offer counseling with them. When God provides, we resettle some of them with their families, and then some of them we retain them and we offer them a skill. Build a base, a training center, call it a Bible Institute, call it a leadership training institute, because we have a passion to plant churches, and we cannot do that without training leaders. So that's one of the things that we dream of doing if God allows us. And we also want to have a skilling program for our children who are homeless. Now at our church we have about 5 of those kids that are working with us. One plays the keyboard, one is on the sound mixer, one helps with fixing things, one is in school, and a few others have gotten a skill and are now employed and trying to earn an income. I also want to tell you about something else that we're doing. We have planted churches in northern part of Uganda, in an area called Karamoja. And this is a semi-desert kind of environment. The people in this environment are very remote. They still depend on their animals for food, for milk, for they eat the blood, they eat the milk, they eat the meat, and there's not been much development that has happened in this community. And also the gospel has not really penetrated in many of these communities. I remember when we started going there in the year 2012, and we were preaching the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the men in those communities, because they are cattle keepers and raiders at the same time, they're called warriors. And so we would witness to these warriors, and they would ask questions like, what is Jesus? Is it a tree? Is it something to eat? Give me that Jesus, kind of thing. They would not differentiate who Jesus is from a tree or an animal or a thing. That's how unreached they are. We've planted 4 churches with them. They have now started a feeding program, and they're feeding about 1,000 kids. And this happens every Saturday. And we also offer them a meal. And the community has been so welcoming. They have received the church. They are grateful for the church, what the church is doing for the community, because they are literally starving. This is not an over-exaggeration. They are starving. The bread and the porridge that we give them every Saturday is like a lifesaver for their children. We want to educate the families, probably do farming in the harsh conditions. We want to teach them about peace because of the civil unrest and the cattle raiding that happens in between them. We want to be able to open up a school. We want to be able to disciple them and equip them so that they can own these churches and run these churches and plant more churches so that they may reach their own people. I am here reaching out to you and kindly requesting you if you could pray with us that God would use us to fulfill His purpose for us here, not only in Uganda, but in Africa, and hopefully across the continent of Africa. Our ministry is called One Mission. Here in Uganda, in the US, it's called One Call Mission. You can visit our page. It's called onecallmission.org, and you'll be able to see a little bit about what we're doing. Once again, thank you so much. May the Lord bless you.
All right. So that's Pastor Peter, and now's a good time, I think, for me to talk to you about this sheet that I handed you, or that you probably received on your way in. Several people have asked how they can help, and so can you give us some more light up here, just in case anybody wants to see? We left room there so that you can write some things in each one. And so we're just going to go down to the middle there. You'll see One Call Mission. That QR code there will send you to their page. I don't know if you noticed, but Peter, he asked for one thing, and it wasn't money. What did he ask for? Prayer. Another thing that we noticed about the Ugandan people, and I didn't even notice it. After we got back, I was reading a blog of I think an expat or something that was talking about Uganda, and they said, if Ugandans, they're not begging, they're not asking you for money. And I started thinking back, and if you've ever been to Mexico, you know that as soon as you get to a light, they're cleaning your I mean, I'm Mexican, so I can say it, right? We're cleaning your windows. We're wanting to wash your car, whatever it is, because we want money. And so at least they're trying to do something, right? But then you always have somebody with a cup or what have you asking for money. Never. Did you ever see that in you? Never. Not one person is asking for money there yet. Everybody is in need. It was the wildest thing. I don't know if it's a pride thing. I don't know if it's just a cultural thing. There's people selling things on the street, but they're not trying to affix it to your car, right? To try to have you drive away with it. And I mean, they're just not. And I don't know that it is hard to differentiate a homeless person from a not homeless person, because the majority of the people, I mean, truth be told, a lot of them look homeless, right? And so it's kind of hard to tell. But for our standards, of course. And so One Call Mission, if you have a heart to partner with, and again, these are all things that we saw and we did and we were in, and so they're tangible for us. We were there, and that's why we're willing to share this with you. But if you have a heart to participate prayerfully and even financially with, whether it be the homeless kid ministry that they go out and they feed them, with Pastor Peter and the Karamoja people, that is also there. If you, and Drew, we're going to let him talk here a little bit about the Karamoja, because he's thinking of putting a mission trip together to go there, and we'll tell you a little more about that. But if you have a heart to partner with Peter, he talked about the land. I think they need, and I'm going to share numbers even though he wouldn't. I think they need $12,000 to purchase the rest of the land that they want, and then they need $5,000 to build a guard shack, because what happens is that if you buy the land and you just leave it, squatters come in. People come in and they take your stuff. And so the goal is to, and thankfully there is a coffee/cacao farmer right below those pine trees, Zula, who prayed with us, who was there. I mean, he was with us the whole time. He's not a believer. Say again? He found my Bible. I'm going to talk about my Bible. The Bible, yes, this Bible has been touched by Sula. Sula kind of helps keep an eye on the land, the pine tree land that's there, but the other land is behind them, and so they would need like $5,000 to build like a little home. Really, it's a guard shack, to hire somebody to kind of keep an eye on the land for them. In Spanish or in Mexico, we call them veladores. They kind of keep an eye on your land, and so those options are there. I want to tell you about one more thing before I forget. Did you remember Pastor Peter said that one of the homeless boys is now working the sound mixer? So there's a gentleman there by the name of Enoch, and Enoch is one of the leaders there at the church, and Enoch they call him Uncle Enoch, because what they did is when they started pulling kids, see, not all of those kids want to be on the street, and they're there for various reasons. Well, those that want to get out, they help them out, and so they've rescued 5, but where were they going to put them? And so what Pastor Peter did was he said, let's rent a house. And so we'll rent a house here by the church, and let's house these boys, but we can't just let them live there and run amok, right? So Enoch, one of the guys in the church, said, I'll live with him. Single guy, 20-some years old, pulled me aside the last day and said, I have a heart to pastor. I want to pastor a church, and I want to get some more training and so forth. And so Enoch is again, I can't, because I couldn't understand him very well. They speak Ugandan, and then they also speak British English. And so between the two, sometimes with the accent, it's hard to understand. So I'm not sure if Enoch went to school to learn sound engineering, or if he went to YouTube University and learned it, but he knows sound like really good, really well. And so he is training these boys to do sound and to learn so they could have a skill. And so he's trained the boy, the sound mixer guy. So not only does he live with them, but he also trains them in that area of sound, but they need more equipment. And so one of the times I said, look, go down to the music stores or wherever you get your stuff and just get me a bid of what you need. What do you need to? And it's funny because he brought me the list, and it's like $6,000 worth of equipment, right? And I was like, man, that's a lot of money. But he said, this is why I want it. He said, I want it so that I can train the boys how to do stuff so that when we rescue more boys, they can learn to do these things. And I thought that's a pretty good use of that money, right? We can help them with that. So if the Lord puts that on your heart, you can be specific in that, and that can kind of help go to helping them purchase the sound equipment that they need for that.
And I just want to drive home the point there that if you saw the sound gear they're working with and the patched up cables and the mixing board that is just probably from the 1970s, and they have one mic on the drums and it's on the bass drum, and feedback issues, and so it's the drummer
we
plays
never
with
bought them drumsticks.
the drummer plays with one full drumstick and a broken drumstick.
And he makes
This
it
is what we're
sound pretty
dealing
good.
with here, and he makes it sound amazing.
Yeah.
I
So
think it was one full drumstick between the two pieces.
yeah,
Yeah.
And so they would never ask you for this. They never asked us for anything. They just didn't. But I had to say, go get me a quote, because he wouldn't do it. And I knew what he was doing. I knew he was working with these young men who they're trying to rescue off the streets. And so if any of that interests you, you would then go to One Call Missions. That's where you can participate in that, and you'll see the donate button where to drop down and the different areas there, and that'll get to that. If you have a specific desire to participate with them financially and it's not on their drop down, let us know, let Drew know, and we'll get with Peter and we'll make sure that gets to that. So tell us, Drew, a little bit about the Karamoja people. Really, like, God really touched your heart with the Karamoja.
yeah. Do you want me to go into? Because I know you want to go through the days, or
we'll see how many days we get through.
Okay.
I really don't want to miss the Karamoja, because that's important. That's
It
important.
was one of the central parts of the trip.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Start with Andrew and Mark Anthony.
John
Mark.
Okay, so and this will kind of start forming the narrative of our
Yes.
trip, because we arrived
Yes.
Tuesday morning,
Yep.
4:30 a.m. Peter came and picked us up, and we hit the ground running. I mean, we went to the hotel and took a little nap until maybe noon and just kind of relaxed. And then, like, that night, Hector taught. Like, that night we landed and Hector was up on the mic preaching. It was incredible. And I was so proud of him. He did so good. I was like, I could not fathom being up there right now preaching. And he was just killing it. So he did so good. And with the translator, speaking in Ugandan. So God really, I think our theme of the trip was stretching. We were all stretched.
I think I grew in height.
Yeah,
I think I might have
I think I
catching
grew
up to
in
you guys.
width. A lot of matoke.
Matoke.
Matoke is their staple food, by the way. It's like a banana. It's like a plantain. Think of it as like a plantain, basically.
It has the consistency of mashed potatoes.
So anyways, to Karamoja, because that's what you asked. So when we first got there, we were told by Peter that there were some men. I didn't even know what Karamoja was. I thought it was a seasoning for food. I didn't know, had no idea what Karamoja was. So we learned over the course of the trip, and it just kept unfolding the story of Karamoja until by the end it was like you said, it was one of the main themes, and there was a reason God did that. Peter told us that there were a couple of men coming from Karamoja to church.
To come see us. He invited them, and they're how far away?
9 hours bus ride overnight through literally the jungle, literally lions, buffalo, giraffe. I mean, they had to go through Kadepo National Park, and that's where all the lions live. Like, they were telling us that there was a trip they had taken there a couple years ago on a tour bus, and they broke down in the middle of this game reserve, and there was a cheetah circling their bus. So, I mean, these guys took the van or the taxi.
It's a van, really.
It's
right?
like a little van, not even really a bus, all the way 9 hours to come. And I was like, well, why? Well, they're coming to church to see, and to participate. At first, I thought they were just coming for the one night. Then I found out, at least they're going to be there the whole week.
The whole time.
So they were there the whole time we were there, which was awesome. But they were just coming to church.
They'd never been to Kampala.
they'd never seen a white man up close.
Never. They'd
We
never
were the
have.
first, and by the way, he's a white man in Africa.
I am a white man.
So it's not just us two white boys over here, because we're all white men. We're all Bazungus.
Yes.
So I was just, I couldn't really believe what I was hearing. And so when that I think it was the Wednesday night, because it was the next night. So they came on Wednesday, and Wednesday was they had their missional community meeting, and they were there, the two guys, John Mark and Andrew, and I just felt such a just compelled to go up and talk to them afterwards. Did I teach Wednesday night?
You did.
Or
You
did you?
shared on walking in the Spirit.
Walking in the Spirit, yeah. So I shared that night, and I went up to him afterwards. I literally just took a knee. I said, man, I just want to say I'm so impressed. I'm honored that you would come to all the way here to church, and put such an effort. It blows my mind. I said, we have a hard time going 20 minutes to church in the United States. Hello. Yeah. Y'all ain't talking to me. They drove 9 hours overnight on a bus to be at church, and they were there all week, and they loved it. And it was, and I have to say, there was something about these guys that was so sweet, so precious. The words that I've been using to describe them, especially the one man, John Mark, is that he radiated Christ. There was a radiance of Christ on his countenance. And it really was impressive. And so they had a gentleness about them. And so kind of fast forward, I don't know if we want to fast forward or we want to just kind of
I
weave
want
that
you
into
to tell them a little bit about John Mark,
his testimony.
Yeah, I think so. Let's
Okay,
cover
let's
that
do
now,
that.
just because
It's there.
Yeah.
That's a good narrative for the
Okay.
rest of the.
Yes.
So fast forward Saturday evening, and Peter comes up to me at about 5 p.m. We're at the church. We're doing, we're just kind of wrapping up our kids ministry.
You were doing
student
choir
youth, and choir stuff.
Yeah.
He says, by the way, a pastor who had attended one of the workshops on Thursday has requested that you, because Hector was already scheduled to preach
On
Sunday at Peter's church. He preached the Sunday morning there. This other pastor said, well, can Andrew come? Pastor Andrew.
Yeah, they
I'm
were
like,
both ordained, by
we're
the way, in
pastors there,
Uganda.
apparently. And I'm like, I ain't no pastor. I'm not even a preacher, really. And she wanted me to come and preach at her church on the Sunday morning service. And I'm like, wait, what? No. But what do you do?
Stretching.
Thankfully, I had a bullet in the chamber.
Yes.
So there was something I could preach on. And so I said yes. I was like, well, I'm here. I'm not going to miss this opportunity. So I just was stretched, and I said yes. So anyways, long story short, I get in the car the next morning. They chauffeur us over to some random dirt road in the middle of who knows where. But they put John Mark in the car with me, the Karamojan man. Actually, you know what? Can you do me a favor? And can you actually put a picture of him up? I just want to...
We'll cycle through some.
It's a picture of me with... Go before that. It's kind of in the middle. It's me standing just with one other African guy.
Well, that's
I don't
going
know
to be
how else to
hard
put
to
it.
differentiate.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Well,
Was he wearing the blue jacket?
oh, it's right before. Yeah, that right there. So we're in the car. He starts telling me his testimony, and my jaw about hit the floor. I was like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you kind of heard Peter talk about it in the video. He said they're raiders and they're cattle herders. So Karamojan people are very good cattle herders. They're very good at raising cattle. In fact, they are so good that there was a time back in the maybe a few decades ago where the Ugandan government was purchasing cows from them because they had a surplus. And they didn't have enough land to even have all their cows graze on. So there was like a partnership they had. But they live in a semi-arid desert in the northeastern quadrant of Uganda. But you got to remember, all of those borders are drawn by European colonizers, right? So they're right next to the Maasai tribe in Kenya. They're right next to South Sudan. I don't know if you all know what happened in South Sudan in the last 20 years. A lot of unrest, a lot of things going on. So there was a time when the Ugandan government armed the Karamojan people. They gave them guns. So they're cattle ranchers, and they're armed to the teeth. They sound like Texans, honestly. Yeah, they're just skinnier than us, probably. yeah. So they were armed to protect themselves. The problem is they also fight amongst each other. And you heard they said cattle raiding. So the bride price in Kampala is 10 cows. In Karamoja, it's 100 cows.
Whoa.
Very pricey women.
A cow in dollars was about a female cow was about $300, and then a male cow was about 600. So that adds up pretty quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's their bride currency in Karamoja. And so therefore what has happened is there's different districts and they will go and they'll raid and they'll steal cows from armed and they will kill people. And they will raid and they will lure people out of their homes, or they'll go into their homes and they'll shoot them. And I'm sitting there listening to John Mark, and he says, that's what I was. I was a raider.
Oh
I used to go steal cows. I used to kill people. I used to go into their homes and shoot them for their cows and steal their cows. And I'm looking at this guy. I could not believe my ears. This man, the gentle, sweet guy that I was sitting there talking for. Karamojan men are some of the fiercest warriors in Africa. Their tribe and their people, like they are tough. One guy even told us, like, there was a time when there were military skirmishes between the Ugandan government and Karamoja almost won. There's like one of their guys is like worth 8 soldiers from the Ugandan government. So these guys are not to be trifled with. Yeah. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say the number. I think he talked about how many Karamoja men there actually were. It was only a couple hundred compared to the thousands in the country's military, and the couple hundred almost overtook the country's military just be off of their skill. And yeah.
Yeah. So and he starts telling me how he got saved. He says, my brother was demon possessed. And he was so demon possessed that at times I had to tie him up with ropes to control him from his fits of anger or rage or whatever. He took him to the witch doctors because witchcraft and polygamy there are very rampant. And of course the witch doctors aren't going to be able to heal him. They're the ones that gave him the demon in the first place. So finally somebody tells John Mark that he can take them to the believers. And they will pray for your brother and he will be delivered from this demon. So he did it. And they prayed for him. And he got delivered from the demon. Praise God. John Mark says to these believers, he says, I'll give you anything you want. And they said, the only thing we want from you is your heart. And then as soon as they said that, I have to believe it was the Holy Spirit. Because this man is completely unfamiliar with the gospel or anything to do with repentance or forgiveness. You got to understand, they thought Jesus was akin to a tree. And he says, well, he starts confessing his sin. I'm a murderer. I used to go and do these horrible things, and the Holy Spirit convicted him of his sin. He got on his knees. He says, if God can forgive me of those things, I'll give him my heart. And they said he can, and he did, and he bowed on his knees, and he got saved. And now he's a pastor. Now he lives in a village of 1,000 people. And when we talk about village, this is like classic Africa, like you grew up, like Lion King Africa. Huts, cattle, goats, no running water. John Mark told me he walked 2 days in a row with no food or water to find water. And these people live in a reality that you and I can't fathom. He told me, now is the rainy season, and I'm going back to my people, and unfortunately, because it's raining, we're planting. That means we don't have a lot of things to grow and eat that are edible right now. A lot of my people will die in the next 3 months. That's right now as we speak. This is the reality they're dealing with while we're sitting here. And so it blew me away. It blew me away to hear this testimony. And I told the pastor where I was of the church I was going to preach at, I said, you have to tell his testimony. Yeah. I'm not going to preach unless you let him go up and tell his testimony. So he did. He got up and told it, and he gave his testimony another time. And so I think to wrap this whole thing up, I think God allowed that on purpose because Peter, as you saw, the largest portion of that video was dedicated to Karamoja. That's Peter's heart. And God wanted us, and including myself, to be aware of that and to understand what his heart is for that. And I get it now. And I'm like, okay, well, the best I can, I'd like to convey it. So to wrap things up, and you indicated it, like, I plan to go back, and I plan to take a team to Karamoja. I actually just spoke to Peter this week on Monday, And I was telling, I mean, this isn't probably this year, maybe 2025. We're still praying and talking about it, but like, we were thinking like we can go to, this was Peter's idea. I don't know if I shared this with you. We can go to Karamoja. We can build a church in Karamoja, and also we can do music. So the idea would be go do a building project, and then basically at the end of the week have a concert that also dedicates and opens this new church in Karamoja. So this is a call to men. It's a men's trip primarily. If you're going to be a woman coming, you got to be a country girl. That's
Those were
Peter's words. You got to be a country girl. There's no high maintenance women on that trip. I'm sorry, ladies. It's just the reality of what we're dealing with here.
Well, there's no running water. There's no electricity, like it's through generators. You have to do. It's like camping times 10.
An African country girl? Yes. Yeah.
Basically, you have to be self-sufficient. You have to
Yeah.
be able to survive on your own, and they're looking for people who can be like a help, and a lot that might exclude some people, but it.
Me. I'll stay in Kampala.
And well, one thing I wanted to add about John Mark, I got to talk to him a little bit myself, and I mean, you just look at the picture right there, and you can just see just the happiness that is coming forth from him. And the best example that I can explain to people who haven't met him is when you read in the Bible about the transformation of Saul to Paul, right? Like this is literally like that same type of scenario. Like Saul hunted Christians and he imprisoned them, and then he turned to Christ, and now he's raising them up to be the next generation. That is his story. Like he hunted people, and now God has completely flipped his heart. And it was amazing to get to know him.
That was neat. They jump high. You probably saw one of the videos. They are known for jumping really high. That's actually how, aside from cows, how they attract the women. The women, the higher you jump, the better chance you have of getting the girl.
The more manly you are.
The more manly you are, and so the more the better your chance of the girl picking you. And when we went to Nadere, they do a dance about that, and they play that out for you. And so the guys are jumping, the girls are like, not you, and then it just right, and then they're chasing them. I mean, it's just what happens there. So we were left with a desire to go back, to go someday to Karamoja. The church there, because it's 9 hours from Kampala, via little van. There are flights in little airplanes that will take you from Kampala and Bali, and Entebbe, right? Entebbe to Karamoja, and they're not super expensive. So we probably would opt to do something like that instead of taking the drive, maybe fly in, and to maximize our time as well. But if that interests you, one, I would say get with Drew, and then probably something that we would need to start praying about, like even now, because it's going to stretch you. And they don't speak Ugandan there. They speak other dialects, right? And some English maybe, but not even too much. They didn't understand Ugandan, so because they just speak whatever I forget the language of the Karamoja, but or the multiple. So that's an option there. We also we did a lot of other things on our I guess and we'll come back to that, but kind of on our first day when we got there, we went on Wednesday. We went and saw the. You want to start scrolling through some things, or? Yeah. We'll talk, and then we'll just put pictures through there, and you can kind of see what we're doing.
So that's the flight to Uganda.
I think we're going. At one point, we were flying over the Red Sea, right? Is that what? The Red Sea. So that was kind of neat. But on Tuesday when we got there, I shared a discipleship class to their people, the people serving there at the church. On Wednesday, we went to visit that land that we saw, the pictures that we saw there, and prayed there. That's when Zulu, the coffee and cacao farmer, prayed with us and stuck with us. And I was just amazed to see this man do that. Peter then took us over to his house, and the well. Remember the well that you guys helped participate and helped him fund. I don't know if the picture will come up in there, but at some point it might. That well is there, and they're working on getting that thing running and working for his family. To date, their family uses a kind of an outhouse kind of thing, and so
That's the land right there.
that's the land, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's Zulu on the far right. So the gentleman in the black with the kind of the tan pants, that's Zulu. And there we are. Peter just put us on the spot. We're sitting there, and he's like, "Okay, Pastor Hector, share with us." And I'm like, "Share what? This was not on the schedule." Remember I told you I'm a control freak before we left? I did. But it was the coolest thing because after like day 2, I was expecting it. I'm like, okay, I better be ready with something because they're going to ask. And every single day we got asked to just,
Each of us. Yeah.
just share, just say something, tell them something. They want to hear from you. And every single time, I think this is important for those of you who desire to go on a mission trip, whether it's here or to Mexico or anywhere else. If you have missions on your heart, you need to know that God is going to take you out of your comfort zone, but that he's going to show up each and every time. Like he will show up. And so when Peter's like, we're sitting there and he's like, would you just share something? Just the Lord had something I had read before just came to my heart, and I said, yeah, let's, and that's where my Bible. So we're sitting there in the forest, and I pull it out and I start sharing from right there. We were there, and I start just sharing. We start praying. Everybody prays, and then at some point Peter says, well, let's take a group picture here. We need a picture. So we that picture that you saw, we found a rock to put our phone on so that we could take the picture, and I set my Bible down there on the floor. There's pine needles about that thick that have just been falling forever. And so you're walking on pine needles. I set it down. We take the picture, and we walk off, and I leave my Bible there. And we take off, and then that night I'm thinking my Bible. And this is not a very expensive Bible, but I've got years of notes of things that God is, like I write in my Bible a lot. And I didn't want to lose that because those were things that God had spoken to me. And so I called Peter and we said, hey, I left my Bible, and we'll figure out if we can find it. That day, a cattle rancher went through his property and saw my Bible, and he picked it up and he wrapped it in a plastic or something, and he dug it in. Remember the pine needles? He dug it in there because he figured it must be somebody's, and he hid it. And so then Peter and them they call Zulu, and they said, Zulu, can somebody go check? They send a little girl to go check, and she doesn't see any Bibles. They're like, there's no Bible. And I knew where I had left it. And so the next day, Peter went back, and he happened to find the cattle farmer and just said, has anybody seen it? And he's like, yeah, I saw it. I know exactly where it's at. Let me come show you where I hid it. And so he goes and he unearths my Bible and hands it to him. And it had rained, so it didn't get wet. It was just the Lord restored my Bible, and I'm so happy for it. Not for it, for me, that I have it back. But just little things like that, right? You step out and God does some cool things with you. And so if you're interested in missions, just know you're going to be out of your comfort zone, but it's the best way to see God at work in your life. And so he did that again with all of us. That afternoon, we went back. MCs are missional communities, and there's leaders who lead those missional communities, kind of like our home groups, if you will. And they're all over the different places. And so they asked Drew to teach on the Spirit, and then I also shared on the Spirit that night. And then we just prayed that evening with him. That was Wednesday. On Thursday, I'm just gonna keep talking. You guys can cycle through those, I guess.
You can keep going forward on the pictures and just kind of slowly cycle through because they should be in the order of the day. So as we talk through.
So Thursday I was supposed to teach again that morning, and they moved that to another night, and so that was our souvenir night. We went and we grabbed some souvenirs, some of which we're going to be raffling off today. And so we actually, those are not from there. I'll tell you about those in a minute. But we were able to get some souvenirs, some Ugandan pizza. Jonah really liked that. The smoothies, he won't stop talking about the Ugandan smoothies. I'm not sure if it has to do with the milk from the cows that have been given over for wives or what, but they were really good. And then that afternoon, they asked Drew to do a lot of work with their they call it their choir, but with their worship team. And I saw a side of Drew that I hadn't seen before, and that was a side where this man has been gifted, and he would never tell you, but he's been gifted musically in a lot of ways, and he's been given that gift of leadership and of knowing how to do things. And he took these kids, because they're all kids. The average age in Uganda, I forget what it is, but it's like it's a young country, a very young country. And he just worked with these kids that evening. He got them sound, because Peter had told us, hey, we have some issues on our worship team. And it's the A, B, C, and D. I won't tell you what they are. And so Drew knew what he was up against. And by the end of that evening, he had them sounding like never before. I mean, they gelled together. They just needed some attention. And so Drew did that on Thursday. On Friday, we're at the, so that's probably the is that part of the choir there?
Yeah, that's like the group picture after the choir training.
So that's choir training. The next day, Friday, we went out and did the street witnessing, I think, or the not the street witnessing, the slums, Katwe.
Yeah, that should be the next set of slides.
Okay, so
yeah,
go back to that one. That is the only picture we took outside of where we were ministering to the kids, because remember I told you on Sunday they said no pictures here. Drew, I think I might have taken that, or did you? Whoever took it, they're like,
I think
no.
Jonah snuck some more. Actually, they're in there. So
Jonah. We're
No,
selling
thank you,
pictures.
Jonah. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I was excluded from that conversation.
So
I did not
this
know.
is within the slum, Katwe. This is I don't know whose building this is, but these kids live there in the slum, and they're homeless, and they sell plastic is what they do. And so we walked, is that in the slum? Is
That's a separate slum. So that's the one right next to the church.
Okay. So this is back to the kids. So these are the kids. We gathered, I think they told me 65 kids, because we were making, somewhere you'll see the picture of all the food. Basically, it's a bowl as big as you can imagine of rice and just a little chunk of meat is what we were feeding them. And there they are. If you go back one, that's what they're going to eat. And so we were working on doing that while they're playing trumpet and dancing. Jonah danced a lot. I was helping them put these plates together. And so we did that. The next picture shows you, because not only do they go minister to them, but those are medical kits. They will fix some of their wounds. Some of them, they're walking barefoot, most of them, so they'll step on something, they'll cut themselves, they have rashes or whatever. And so we didn't get to do that because we had to leave, but we did spend time with the kids there in the slum. And I have to tell you, I've never seen anything like that. What did you guys walk away with from the kind of that outreach, the Katwe?
Yeah, it was. I remember Peter had talked about this. He's like, "Hey, you need to pray up, and you need to prepare yourself, because it's what we're going to go do. It's going to be very different from what you're used to." And just him describing what the normal was around there: lack of food, lack of housing, lack of hygiene, lack of water, lack of medical supplies, and you go there and you see everything that they're going through, and it was very life-changing. And I remember the smell. I remember the smell, and just how bad it was. And it was just like, I could barely stand it for the couple minutes that I was in there. And it's like, this is their life. Like, this is what they see every single day. And it was very... It was very hard to see. And throughout the week, we had talked about, I think, like, the one word that kind of described that week was stretching. Like, all of us felt stretched in our own way. Pastor Hector talking about wanting to be in control, and it was just part of the schedule for him to be called on randomly. And Drew with the teaching last minute, even though he's not what you would call like a normal teacher, and myself, the big thing for myself is I would consider myself a little bit more introverted, and I was put in a position to where I couldn't be that, to where I had to talk to these kids. And specifically on this day, one of the things that we focused on was having one-on-one with these kids. And I have to tell you, that was one of the hardest things I had to do, because I'm having to talk to these kids who have gone through more than I ever will in my life, and they're only 8 years old, 9 years old, and I'm having to talk to them, and there's no way that I can relate to them. Like, not to depress you, but just a couple of the stories. Like, Drew talked to a girl to where her aunt had brought her to the city and brought her to a train station and said, "Hey, I'm going to be right back," and then she never came back. And that little girl was
the only girl.
She was the only girl there, and she lived at that train station. Sheba, yeah. She lived at that train station for about 2 days, and then she went to the slums area. And when you saw those pictures, you saw how bad it was. A lot of these kids would choose this over where they came from. That's how bad their stories are. And I got to talk to one boy to where his parents had passed, and he was living with his brother, and then his brother got arrested, and that had been 2 years ago. And he's been living on the slums for 2 years now. And I grew up with both parents. Like I grew up in a home to where I got 3 meals a day, and I was loved, and I couldn't relate to what he was going through. And it was one of those moments where I was like, Lord, I don't have the words to speak to them. I don't know how I can help them, but you do. And for myself, it was very much a day to where it was like I had to hold back the tears. And I'm not a very emotional person, but it was hard that day. It was very hard that day.
That day drained us. We each got to, because again, it was like, so I thought we were going to just sing and dance and leave. And they're like, no, we need you to do one-on-one with some of these boys. And so they just started, Drew over there, Jonah on this side, me here, and they just started bringing kids out. And they're like, tell them your story. And all I could do was really pray with them. And those were some of the stories. One of the boys I talked to, Derek Cruz. And it's so neat because Derek, with my Spanish, I'm able to Cruz. I'm like, okay, Cruz, I know that word. It's a cross. And I was like, so what does Cruz mean? And I said, how do you spell it? They're like, C-R-U-Z. I said, you got to be kidding me. And they're like, yes. And so what does that mean? And he said, it means something powerful, like a powerful blow, if you will. And I'm like, I know of a powerful blow from a cross. And so I started sharing with Derek. I said, listen, there's another word in Spanish. Let me teach you some Spanish. And so I told him that. And he just couldn't believe it. This kid had already accepted the Lord. But he had an interesting story in that he was from a town far away, just a little village. He had come to Kampala. He left his family, come to Kampala to try to make a better life for himself. He's 19 years old. And as he got to Kampala, he was mugged. And he was left with nothing. He says, they took my phone, took my backpack. I was left with nothing. And so I ended up here. And when I was talking to him, he was making these little things. You've probably seen them. That people just weave them together, I guess. And he was like working on it. Just kind of shy, right? And he's doing it. I'm like, so what do you want to do? Do you want to get out of here? He says, I do. I said, what do you want to do with your life? And what aspirations do you have? And he said, well, I have problems with my eyesight. When I go out into like the bright sun, it hurts my eyes, and so I can see, but I've got problems with that, and I'm not good in school, so I don't think I'm going to do any kind of schooling. And so I just looked down, and I said, it looks like you're pretty good with your hands, because he was weaving one. He says, yeah, I mean, I could do something with my hand. And so we prayed, and then we went inside after that, and we fed them, did what we did. Jonah, you shared the word with them, and how many kids accepted the Lord at the slum?
At the slums, I believe it was 4 kids.
4 kids came to Christ at the slum. So that's like a yes. That was awesome. That was awesome. But as we were leaving, so remember we had to leave early. We didn't get to do any of the medical side. We're leaving. They're in line to eat, and Derek sees me. He's like, "Where are you going?" And I said, "We're leaving." And he said, "Hold on." And he gets out of line to eat, and he goes back inside this place, and he comes back with this bracelet, and he says, "Can I give you that?" And I just thought, this kid has nothing, and here he is giving me something, right? And he actually gave me 3. I think they sold theirs. I'm not sure what they did with theirs, but no, I think you passed it on to somebody. I think you guys
Mine is
just
at home.
But mine is special because I prayed with Derek Cruz across. You have one of the most powerful last names out there in Spanish. It's that power of the cross, Derek. And that is what saved you. And so just little things like that God put us on the spot and that happened. So we did that on Friday. Go ahead.
I was going to say a little side note. One thing that was very, very cool and quite frankly funny to see was Pastor Hector's desire to teach them Spanish. It was like they know a little bit of English, they know a little bit of Ugandan, and by the end of this trip, they know a little bit of Spanish. It was like every teaching, he'd teach them a new word, and it was funny to see. It was funny to see.
I don't know if this will come out. Their worship leader, Joseph, a lot of them wanted our information, so we're communicating via WhatsApp, and he's been communicating with me and saying, "Hey, I need Spanish," and so. See, they wanted it, and he's like, I want to learn phrases in Spanish. And so a few days ago, he said, "Hey, can you tell me how to say, what did it say? There is no one like Jesus in Spanish." And so then I told him, and I'm recording it and going back and forth, right? And he's doing it. And then he's like, "Okay, now I need another phrase. What about God has blessed me?" And so I'm telling him, and then let's see if this will come out on my microphone. I don't know, but this is him repeating. See, I'm teaching him Spanish. You know, that's what he's saying. Let's see.
Oh yes, thank you, Pastor Hector. It is Dios me ha bendecido. Dios me ha bendecido. God has blessed me. And yesterday's statement was, there is nobody like Jesus. It was, no hay nadie como Jesús. So I'm learning one statement by day. Thank you so much. Maybe within a month I'll be somehow in Spanish. Thank you so much. May God bless you, Pastor Hector.
Yeah, he's learning Spanish. He wants to learn Spanish. So, yeah, that was like a way that I could connect with them and something that I knew they did not have. None of them knew any Spanish. And so I used it as an icebreaker. And again, that's something the Lord, I didn't go in with that. It was wild. The Lord just gave me that to say, you have a place that we stayed at called the Guest House. So it's a hotel type place. Behind it is the Anglican church. It's up on a hill. It's been burnt down and it destroyed several times, and now it's in its nicest form. Next to it is a hospital that the Anglican church made, but right below us, one of the nights, Drew's like, there is somebody screaming outside, and I think they're dying. And was that you, Jonah?
It sounded like it. I woke up at 6 in the morning to screaming, and I was like, what is going on?
What is happening here? There's people dying out here, and they need help. It was an orphanage. So right below us, where we were staying, like is Sanyu Babies, and that's another one of the places there on your list. Sanyu Babies is an orphanage that takes in kids because some of you may be wondering how you end up on the streets at 9 years old. Well, Sanyu Babies is an orphanage that takes kids in from 1 hour, 1 minute, whenever they find them, to 4 years old. And then after 4 years old, they have to transfer them to another orphanage. And we came to find out that there are kids that are just, they're abandoned. They're had, incest is a big deal in Uganda, and so if you are an incest baby, you are rejected by the community, by your family. Your family will not claim you because you're not pure. And so it's that. It's just young girls, just a myriad of different reasons why. What was happening was, in this orphanage in 2028 will have been there for 100 years, and it was founded in 1928. It's been in operation that long, and they just rescue kids that they find on the side of the street. They have found them in sewers. They find them on. You remember when she talked about the dog? Yeah. She says that there have been occasions where dogs have found babies left out in the woods, and I would have thought they'd eat them. You know what the dogs do? They grab them and they pull them off to the street so that they can be found. And she said, we have found babies that have been brought kind of to be found by people.
Another reason why dogs are better than cats.
Very true. Cats would have eaten them. Cats would have eaten them right away.
And we couldn't have any pictures there. They wouldn't.
They wouldn't let us do pictures there. So Drew and Jonah went back on another day, and they shared again, and they did music there with them. But adopting them is extremely difficult. That we learned that for Americans, and the director was like, I don't know why it is, but it is. They make it hard for you. Ugandans, it's free. That Ugandans can adopt babies from there for free. We would struggle financially and in all kinds of ways to adopt them, but we can support their ministry, and so they end up on the street because a lot of them just get left. They get dumped by their parents, and there were how many kids were in that? I don't remember how many kids were in Sanyu babies, but there were a lot.
Over 100.
Over 100 babies, and from birth to as we were walking in, there was like a little makeshift incubator because they gave us a tour of their facility, and she said, this baby right here, 4 days old, and just a beautiful little boy, but had been abandoned. And so we did that on that same day. That evening we had a prayer service. Andrew Drew they call him Andrew over there, so I'm calling him Andrew. Drew, like he did throughout the whole time. Yeah. And you just gave an awesome word that night, and they were blessed by it. People came up and prayed with us, and so that was Friday. Saturday, I started off with the leaders and ministry leaders, just a study that God had put on my heart, and so I shared that with them, and that was probably our longest day. Then Jonah shared that we didn't know what was going on, honestly. We just know that, okay, now these people are coming in. So those people were there serving. I shared with them, and then they said, okay, now kids are coming. And next thing you know, like 5 kids show up, and then 10 kids show up, and then a van full of like 40 kids shows up, and then and they just kept coming. And next thing you know, it was you were scheduled to teach the kids.
I was scheduled to teach, and it went a little bit later. So we have this thing called they have this thing called Uganda time. So if it's supposed to start at 5, it's not really going to be starting till 7, right? So you have like that couple hour break. And Enoch had asked me to come with him to go collect kids, and we walked around the slum that was right next to the church. And we'd go talk to the parents and say, hey, we have this event going on for kids. Would your child like to come? And they'd say yes, and the child would follow us. And then we'd bring them to the church. We ended up having 65 kids just at
No, more, 138 kids.
138 kids?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a lot more.
138 kids, yes.
138 kids. And yeah. That's
How many gave their life to the Lord?
So when I taught the kids, at the end, I had to keep things very simple, and I found that was much harder than just a regular teacher teaching the word simply, even simpler. Yes. And at the end of it, I felt the need to say, like, would you like to accept Jesus into your heart? And I explained like the importance of that. And I don't remember the exact number, but I saw a picture and I counted, and there was 14 kids. 14 kids there. And yeah, it was.
And then I put Jonah on. I just threw him a curveball because after that they file out the kids. You guys got to go, and then in come the youth, and they had asked me to teach to the daughters of Zion, and I'm thinking, what am I going to teach the daughters of Zion? Who are the daughters of Zion? the Daughters of Zion is a group of teenage girls that they're ministering to in their community that are like kind of looked down upon. They're marginalized. They're just not. I don't really know who they are, but they were there and they're like, you're going to teach that, but we're also going to bring our youth group in, just more kids, whoever we can bring in. They were just grabbing them off the street, and so I thought, you know what? We have our youth leader with us. Why don't we just have him teach? So I pulled Jonah aside and I said, hey, I think you need to teach the youth. And you know, I have to tell you, Jonah, you really impressed. We talked about this, didn't we? Yeah. Tell him what we talked about. Just him impressing us with just his no complaining, no any of.
Oh yeah. Well, I think I would say probably that was, maybe the two hardest times were Pastor Hector preaching, the day we land because of jet lag and exhaustion. But then, like, that afternoon was a very difficult moment to teach because it's 3 p.m. You have that lull, and you're preaching to a bunch of teenagers. So,
It's outside.
teenagers are teenagers in Uganda as the same as they are in the United States, right? So various levels of attention spans and attitudes and what have you, but God came through, and I commended Jonah for that. And then just in general, like, Jonah's a young man. He's 22 years old, and I just was impressed with his ability. I've taken other men's groups to trips in Mexico, and you won't believe what like some men complain about, because they didn't get the right food on their plate. I'm like, dude, we're on a missions trip. Chill, but Jonah never did that. He kept just a positive attitude the whole time, was completely open to everything. And that's what you have to do on a missions trip. You just have to eat the food that's served to you, and like Pastor was saying, just be ready for God to stretch you. And I was so proud of Jonah for doing that. Yep.
And several young kids accepted the Lord on that service too. I don't know how many.
I don't have the.
They're
exact
big
number,
into
but
numbers, so like we knew numbers at some point. But
yeah,
forgot.
I know it was over 6. It was over 6 people had come up, and that was Saturday, right? Or
That was
Friday.
Saturday. Saturday.
So we're already 5 days into the trip. So like mentally, I'm ready for like a surprise attack, right? He's like, okay, you're gonna teach, and I was like, okay, I need to have something available. And it just so happened, literally the day before we flew out, we had a youth conference here with our youth group, and so I already had like those messages ready to go. And so when I got asked to teach the youth kids, I was like, sweet, I already have, like, this is perfect. I had to adjust some things just because they don't have. They don't have Dutch bros out there, so that joke wouldn't have worked. But they had other things, but it was very much a growing experience.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the clock, so we're going to move forward here. Sunday did not go as planned. I was told we were going to do 2. Nothing went as planned. We're going to have 2 services. Because of the performances that they were giving for us and everything, things just went long, and I thought, I've got to teach at this time. I remember my control freak, so I'm like, okay, I got to teach at this time. I've got a message that's this long, and then I got to redo it again, and I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, there's no way. Like,
how long was one study supposed to be? Like an hour and a half?
Like an hour and a half, they told me. Like, you got an hour and a half, and then we'll do it again, and next thing you know, we're like hours into this thing. This was a 5-hour service on Sunday. And what Peter did without telling us was that he combined 2 into 1. And so he just had everybody come, everybody stay, because we were going to feed them. So part of what you did without you knowing is that we blessed them with feeding the entire church, over 300 people, kids and adults, that evening or that afternoon after service. But at one point, Peter said, he just hands me a little slip of paper, and he's like, you got 40 minutes. And I was like, man, 40 minutes? I can barely warm up with 40 minutes. That's my introduction. And so I knew, like, everything that I had planned, like, most of it God didn't even use. Like, he just said, you got to teach something else. And so I'm put on the spot, and I'm like, okay, Lord, what do I share? And I'm looking out at the people. These are people I hadn't seen. Some of them I've seen all week. Most of them I hadn't. These are all Sunday goers. And so the Lord just gave me a message. And so I shared it. And I kind of like Jonah, I just sensed the need for an altar call, even though that wasn't necessarily where my message was going, but I did, and 3 young ladies, I'm telling you, under like the age of 19, came forward, and they raised their hand sheepishly, and I said, come on up, let's pray for you, and they didn't want to, but I said, look, I'm not going to embarrass you, I don't even do this at my own church, but let's just do this now. So they came up, and they stood there, and I'm leading these 3 girls in prayer, and then as I'm praying, or as I'm talking to them about what just had happened, Pastor Peter's wife comes up to me, like we're mid-live stream. You could probably see this online. And she comes up mid-live stream, and she interrupts me, like not in a bad way, and she whispers, and I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, I just did something I'm not supposed to be doing. I probably shouldn't be leading these young ladies. Maybe culturally the women do. I don't know. And she whispers into my ear, and she says, hey, we have a lady who's listening online who wants to give her life to the Lord as well. And so I stopped, and I just couldn't believe it. And then come to find out there were 2 ladies online who had also raised their hand and given. They had never, ever in the whole time they've been live streaming, had anybody give their life to the Lord on their online service. And they did. And they used a turkey like me to lead them to Christ. And so...
well, Peter said, now that unlocks online for us. Yeah.
It's like, that unlocks it, man. People are going to start getting saved online. I was like, I don't know if that's how that works, Peter, but we'll see. That evening, we went to the Debrief dance performance, which is a whole nother thing in and of itself. It's a neat thing. But then we're getting towards the end of our trip. We got 2 more days because this is important too. Drew and Jonah went to Sanyu Babies. They did that Devo and worship with the staff there. We drove then to Jinja. Pastor Peter is bivocational, so he works at the church, but then he also works at a school, and you'll see that's the first one there, Kaya School. He works there in an administrative role, I think in an accounting role is what he does there, and so he goes. This is a schedule. He teaches church on Sunday, and then on Monday morning he gets up early and he drives how long did it? 3 hours to get to Jinja. If there was order on the streets, it'd probably be like an hour drive. But because there isn't order, it takes you that long. So he drives there. He spends a night Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at Kaya. He has an office with a little cot around the back, and then he drives back home on Wednesday night, and he does that every single week. Well, Kaya is a school that was founded by an American, a couple from California, and it started as like a home where they would take in homeless kids and kids who were troubled and so forth. It's turned into a school, and that's the school that we walked into every single classroom. I don't know if we have pictures of that, but anyhow, so Kaya is a full-fledged school. They have, how many? We walked into like 9, 10 classrooms maybe. Yeah. And we didn't know this, but they're like, okay, we have Mizungus. And so the kids all got up, and then they're like, Drew, tell us something about this. And so there he is telling him something. And the next one, Jonah and me. And so we went through each classroom. And so that is a school with whom we spent time with the kids, with the staff. We were able to pray with their head teacher, what we would call a principal, with their head administrator. We prayed for them, prayed in their offices. If you have a heart to like sponsor a child in school, that's a good opportunity. We've been there. You can go there. If we go back, you can go to Kaya and you can see the school and see what they're doing. It's a pretty amazing thing. So that was in Jinja. That's where the school is at. We went on a river boat ride into the River Nile. So
you can fast forward.
Do we have some pictures of that?
Yeah. So this is that there. So this is the source of the Nile River.
Kind of like our only touristy thing we did.
There you go. Yeah.
Right under there, even though you can't see it, there's a spring that comes up from underneath there, and that births the Nile River. So that is where it begins. It ends in the Mediterranean Sea. Are they fighting? Yes. What are you guys doing?
And this you fell in.
I almost fell in.
You almost fell in. Okay. You would. This is like in the middle of nowhere, and so then you get there, and this is behind us is the Lake Victoria. Up from us is the beginning of the Nile River, and so obviously a historic, beautiful place. From there, we went to Calvary in Tebe, which we were that's not yet with at Calvary in Tebe, but
That's I think the only picture we have at Kaya.
That's
So
of
that's with their
Kaya.
girls choir.
most of those girls are there.
Okay, this is Calvary. This is starts where our Calvary time here.
Remember the killing fields that I told you about, where what's the guy? Yeah, the dictator guy. Idi Amin would kill the send the bodies. It's right here. It's where we're standing, and so this is now Calvary Chapel in Tebe. Calvary Chapel in Tebe has a school of 250 kids, and I put that on there too because they also have kids that you can sponsor. And I forget what he told me it was, but we saw it. We saw the kids. You taught the kids to do what? You crazy American.
I taught them to say, "Yo, what's up?"
Yo, what's up? So he's got them doing like, yo, what's up?
Yo, what's
chest
up?
bumping. And I'm like, the teachers aren't going to go for that. But
This is a good picture to highlight. So this is the doctor that we spoke to for the
Yes.
last Hope Medical Outreach.
Hope Medical Outreach. So I want to tell you a little bit about that with the little time we have left. Hope Medical Outreach is now it's part of Calvary Chapel in Tebe, in that it's on their property. It's a separate ministry, but still you can help it there. It started with what happened was that they were having young girls, and so you'll have to just pardon me that I know we have some young people in the audience, but this is important. Young girls that when they came to their time for their cycle, they didn't have the money to buy the pads and the thing, what's the word I'm looking for, Jen? Sanitary napkins. I needed to say that. So they didn't have them, and so there were men who would take advantage of the situation and say, "I'll buy them if," and so you can almost imagine, and so they caught wind of this, and so they said, "How can we help this?" And so they started making them. They started producing napkins that they can, and again, ladies, you probably would never do this, but they make them for them. And
That's them right there.
That's them right there. And so they make them to where they give them out a 6-pack that'll last them 2 years. Again, they have to wash them, they have to air dry them, they have to sun dry them, but it is a ministry that they are doing, and they've made thousands of them. And so it kept the little girls and even the moms from being vulnerable to those who would say, "I'll buy them if." And so now they're doing this, and I don't know if we have more pictures of what was going on there.
Well, I think financially, it said they cost them $3 a month.
$3 a month.
That's a lot of money. Like $3 a month to be able to buy.
Yes.
And so these are these.
They're giving them out.
They're giving them out one, and they'll last them for years.
Yes. And so if you help with Hope Medical Missions, not only are they doing that, and which, by the way, the couple of things we're going to, I was going to say auction off here, raffle off here, are made by the ladies who are using not only, so they're using their sewing machines, not only to make these things, but they're also making other things to sell. And so we bought those from them just in support of what they're doing. And so that is all part of kind of Calvary Chapel in Tebe. The school is there. They also go off into the islands of Lake Victoria. It's the second largest body of water, fresh water, second to Lake Superior. And so there are islands within the lake that people live in. And so they go to these places. When they first started going there, they would see the HIV rates out the roof. As they started ministering to them, teaching them hygiene, working with them, they said that there were times that this doctor was telling us there were times that they'd get there and there were no cases. They went from like 40% to like 0 cases of HIV. And so it was just all by the things that they're doing. And they don't just go do social work. They're sharing the gospel. They're planting churches and doing whatever they could in these islands. And so that's had to slow down because of finances for them. This is CBI, where Mia is at currently, not there. She's at the one in California, but this is Calvary Bible Institute there, and they asked Jonah to teach, and so I don't know if that's Jonah teaching. They once again put me on the spot and said, "Would you teach also?" And I'm like, "I'm used to this. What are you going to say, Lord?" And then he gave me something to say. and so Jonah's teaching there. They have 10 students currently, and the 3 of them are female, and they're just growing, and they're going to be sent out, and they're going to plant churches in Uganda and other areas. And so this is Pastor Eddie. He's kind of the head pastor. That by the way, is CBI in the back, those kind of hut-looking things. That's what the campus looks like. He is Pastors Calvary Chapel Nangombe. They're kind of on the grounds of Calvary of the CBI. And there is us. We had to take a boat ride to the island, not to the island, to the other side of the lake. And that's us. The guy driving the boat is also a student, so he's a boat captain / student. Pastor Fred is there somewhere. Pastor Fred's in the black shirt there. Jonah, tell us about this, because we'll end with this. Is back in Entebbe.
This was a really cool moment. But before I get into that, I just want to say that one of like my personal like highlights of the trip. There's a lot of them, but one of the top ones was getting to go and visit the CBI in Entebbe. And the reason for that was, as some of you guys know, that I went to the campus in Yucca Valley, California. My wife and I did. My brother has gone there. Mia's there right now. And the year that I went in 2019, they didn't have this yet, and we were praying about it. And I remember like sitting in class and then talking about the school and their plans for the school, and just I remember being in class and praying specifically for this, and never knowing if I'd be able to see it in person. Wow. And then just being able to go and to see it in real life and be like, I prayed for this, and like this is not often do you get to see like physical answers to prayer like this in that magnitude. And it was a highlight of mine, and the opportunity to teach there was very precious to me. And I was telling them that like you're about to be sent out in ministry. Like this is the world. Just like I tell my youth kids on Wednesday nights, like you have to be that water in the oasis, or that water in the desert for them. And so that was a really cool opportunity. And then when we leave there and we go out to lunch with Pastor Peter and Pastor Fred, and we're at this like open restaurant. Had really good Mediterranean food. And as we're about to leave, we had talked to one of the waiters, and he said, "Hey, I'm a pastor as well." And that just sparked up a whole. He was
the guy in the yellow is the cleaning guy.
He was the cleaning guy, and he said, "Hey, I'm a pastor as well." And that sparked up a whole another conversation. We have 3 pastors at our table, so it was a very great way to connect with him. And as we're about to leave, I think he walked up to Drew, and he said, "Hey, can you pray for me?" So we all come around, and it started with me, Drew, Hector, Pastor Peter, and Pastor Fred, just like our group,
and the young men in the yellow.
The men in yellow. And halfway through, I opened my eyes, and the rest of the entire restaurant staff had come in. Like, no joke, like everyone who was waiting tables and cooking had come in to join in the prayer. And being the American that I am, I decided, I'm going to take a picture of this.
There he is.
And so that picture mid-prayer, that was me. And it was just so crazy, because you would never see that here. And it was just it shows you just like their openness and their heart to receive the gospel, to receive the Lord, and that on our last day too. It was just really cool to see.
It's the way to end. And I'm just realizing, I told you could ask questions. We have not allowed you to ask a single question. Do you have any questions? Can we take a couple minutes if anybody has any questions, any thoughts? Please, yes, Tom. The spiritual battle. Okay, yeah, good question. Spiritual battles.
The spiritual battles happen before the trip. And when you're prayed up and you're fasted, then you encounter things. But for me, and I think you can probably testify to this too. Like, the fight was before the trip. I encountered hell, physically, mentally, spiritually, relationally, on multiple levels leading up the trip, which was only a confirmation to me. I knew this was the right thing to do. In terms of the spiritual dynamic in Uganda, you're dealing with, I mean, there's witchcraft, but it's not open. It's hidden witchcraft. Thankfully, we didn't encounter any of that directly, though, and so I would honestly say, like, I felt like God opened the windows of heaven for us and poured out a blessing for the trip, and I think that's only a testament to, like, the fact that we went in there with open arms, open hands, open minds, and being willing to just let God use us as broken vessels and not come with our own agenda, and really follow the lead of Pastor Peter.
Nobody got sick, no flight delays, none of that. It was just the wildest thing. It was a smooth trip in that respect.
Yeah, it very much was. We almost got stuck in the airport on the way back, but that's a story for another time. But
Yes.
The trip itself, we survived, and honestly, it was more than just survive. We grew.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I would say too, like, traveling with other people, it always reveals, you travel with people, and probably that hasn't always gone well, but I can say traveling with these two guys, it never, nothing ever got escalated, nothing ever got heated. We were challenged at times, but we really walked through it as brothers and grew and became closer as friends. And so even that dynamic, which can sometimes be the worst part of a missions trip or a trip, was perfect, perfectly fine. Yeah, so
God did it.
thank you for your prayers.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Lon, good to see you. That's a good question, and I think what's the difference in spiritual climate between here and there? There is so I'll just start by telling you, there is a Muslim presence, quite a few. In fact, the biggest building downtown is a mosque, and it's huge. It wakes you up every morning, right? The loudspeakers. It's there. There is a Christian, there's a Christian side to it. There's a demonic side to it, and the witchcraft, and like all of that exists, but it is kind of an underground thing. But Uganda to me is very much, they have nothing, and so everything that we would put our hope in or our trust in or our expectations in, they don't have. And so when they get the gospel, they are infused with this joy that we often lack, because they don't have, there's nothing greater than that for them. And so I think the gospel has been there for a while, like you can tell.
Yeah.
But there is still a hunger for it. The restaurant is a great example of it. Like, nobody ever looked at us like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Don't do that. Like we are kind of experiencing in our country, right? I mean, our schools, we can't even mention his name anymore. And that, it's the complete opposite. I bet if we would have asked to go into schools, they would have let us in. Like, I think they would have let us in, because they're just open to that. So I see it. I think the harvest is white in Uganda.
That's a great way to put it.
Any other questions or thoughts? You guys have been very patient. Yes, please. Is there any kind of danger to being a Christian in that environment? I would. I'm not sure what the light. I don't know if we're trying to produce some sort of
Light show here.
light show, but we did not sense any danger whatsoever. I've asked, did you guys at all feel in danger while we were there? Not at all.
In
And
fact,
we were walking through like the streets of downtown Kampala. Everybody will look at you because you're a Mzungu, so they're like, "What in the world is he doing here?" They will look at you, but they don't that nobody was antagonistic or bothered or anything. They might be talking about you because they're speaking Ugandan and you wouldn't know it. But at no point did I ever feel threatened or at risk. But fairly far. Kenya would be bordering Karamoja, so they would be up on the north. It's north of them, and then the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is north west of them. Rwanda is just directly west of them. All places that have had, conflict, and even Uganda has had conflict. Anytime their president it's a democracy. Their president's been in power 38 years, so it's really a dictatorship. Elections are in 2026. I probably wouldn't take a group in 2026 because every time there has been elections, the people do not want war, but they realize that this man is not a good man. He's not a good leader, and anytime there has been. There's a documentary out there called Bobby Wine. If you want to look for it, that's a good one that would give you a very good idea of what life is like under this dictator. And so most people are like, we can't do anything about it, so we're just going to live joyfully in whatever we have, and they have very little.
I'd like to share one thing that I was reflecting on the other day. It kind of goes into those questions and kind of digs into what you just said. That, one, the crime, actually we asked Peter, and the crime is not really bad in Kampala. There's no gangs, there's no drugs. And I was like, well, what about heroin and fentanyl? And like, those are rich people drugs. The drugs that people do here are like sniffing gasoline and airplane fuel and things like that. So there's not a lot of crime besides petty theft, snatching iPhones and stuff like that. So, but to kind of answer the question about spiritual climate, I would say that it kind of goes into what we're talking about with the joy thing. I was listening to a sermon the other day, and he was talking about the story of Jesus' first miracle with the wedding at Cana and the wine. And the pastor was making a point that I think made me realize something about Uganda. Jesus knew that they were going to run out of wine before the wedding happened. He has foreknowledge of everything. He could have easily shown up at the wedding and said, you know what? I know they're going to run out. I'm going to just go ahead in the back. I'll make them 12 barrels, and just so that they don't get embarrassed, and then they'll have enough. Jesus didn't do that. Well, why? That would have been a reasonable thing for him to do, not embarrass the host or whatever, but he didn't do that. What did he do? He waited till they were bone dry, until they had nothing left, and they had to cry out to God. Jesus is God. They had to cry out to him. Well, specifically, his mother came to him, and there's a spiritual principle and a lesson that we can learn from that. And I think it makes me realize, why does John Mark have a radiance of Christ? It's because he doesn't have anything else. The wine bottle is empty. And when the wine bottle is empty, or when the wine jar is empty, your only choice is to cry out to God. And it was like going back to what Jonah was saying with speaking to the street kids. You feel such a despair in your own soul when you hear these stories, and a helplessness because there's nothing I can do for this kid. And it makes you realize, I either am going to turn this off in my mind and ignore it, and to just not have to deal with that really bad feeling, or cry out to God. Those are your only two options. John Mark lives in a constant state of that, of dependence on Christ. And that's why he radiates Christ more than I do, more than we do. So you want to talk about spiritual climate. For those who are in the Lord there, they have nothing else. And so their dependence on Christ is a lot deeper. Their cry out to God, even their prayers are loud. And there was at one point where we were kind of bothered by it, but then it's like, well, wait a minute. Their dependence on God is deeper than ours. And that mine, I can't speak to everyone, but it was like, I have the creature comforts. I have Amazon. I have an iPhone. I have all these things. Even if you think about societal structures and welfare state and all these things, they have none of that. If things crumble, you have nothing, and you have to cry out to God. And that's why miracles happen there. That's why Bishop Godfrey told me that they were in Karamoja and they prayed for somebody, and their leg got healed. It was broken. It got healed in front of them. Well, it's because they have to drive 9 hours to Kampala for a doctor. So God had to show up in that moment. And there's a dependence on God there that convict me so deeply that it's like, man, I want that. And like, what can I do as a Christian here living in the comfort of America, but still have that, strip myself of the things that are robbing me from being able to radiate Christ the way they do.
I have some things that I want to give away to you. And so, Jonah, grab the first one there by you and put it on for us, will you? The stretching continues. This is an apron made by the ladies who are making the sanitary napkins there. So they make these, and so they just use pieces of fabric, and we wanted to do that. So then you display it, you pick it out, and I'll call it out. Okay, hold on. I can't see. Okay, 558106. That is yours. 106. All right.
That's perfect.
Yeah, there you go. That is perfect.
That's perfect.
Next to those, all right. Way to go, Sylvia. Good. Yeah, they also make oven mitts. So this is a pair of oven mitts from, again, the ladies there. Drew, yeah, try them on. Can you please? Do they fit your hands? Okay. So this is all in one size. 558092. 558092. Karina, there, man, you got yourself some. Okay, awesome. And then I've got 3 other things. So you remember the homeless boys? They are not only teaching them how to do sound, how to integrate back into the community, go to school, but they're also teaching them other skills. And one of the skills that they kept talking about were making books. We're making books, and I'm thinking, what are these books that you're making? Because at times they'd be like, they can't come with us because they're making books, and so I wanted to know what the books were. In the end, I said, look, I don't know what kind of books you're making, but if you bring me some books, we'll buy books so that we could take back with us. Well, they're still working on training these homeless boys how to do it, and so what they're making are these. They're just like notebooks, and they're very rustic. They're very just very rustic. They're not even very straight. But the last night he said, look, we have a few books that we've made. We're still working on doing them. We took these and we had them cut. And so I want to give these to you. These are made by some of the homeless boys there at the church, and just a little memoir of One Mission Church and their homeless ministry. So, yeah, let's see who gets this. Probably somebody who needs to. Again, I can't see. I should just keep them on, huh? 558-098. That was very close to the last one. 098. All right, Sean, you get your pick. They're all wonderfully. I want you to bring that to church on Sundays and start taking notes. 558085. 085. Chase. All right, one more. 558068. 068. Joanne, you get yourself a book. All right. So, thank you for being here. We've kept you longer than we do on a Wednesday evening. And yeah, we probably left out stuff that we could have told you. And so you have access to the three of us in the coming weeks and days. So you feel free to ask us. I know for somebody who's gone on a mission trip, one thing that's important is to debrief. And so if you want to do any debriefing with any of the guys, please do so. Maybe ask personal questions there that we couldn't get to tonight. Amen? Can I pray? Let's pray. Lord, thank you for our time. I know that you've been overhearing, Lord, everything that was said. And, Lord, we didn't get to all the questions that needed to be asked. And so would you answer those, Lord, in your timing? Thank you for the ministries, Lord, that you have allowed us to visit and to see and to stand in and to hold the babies and hold the students and talk to the students, see them with their own two eyes, Lord. See these things that they're real, and living in a world where there's a lot of things that are fake and false, Lord, we can vouch for these things, and we just ask that you would supply, Lord, their needs, the things that they have, and the need is endless. Jesus told us that the poor you will always have with you. And so, Lord, we know that, and we can't meet every single need that they have. We can't help every kid. But, Lord, if there's a help that we can be, I pray that you would unite both the helper and the person in need. Lord, if this is just the first of many trips that you want for our fellowship, would you also establish that, and would you confirm that for us? Lord, if Karamoja is a place that you want us to go minister to as a church, Lord, if you have men that you're calling even now as we're praying, Lord, men that would be willing to be completely outside of their comfort zone. Even ladies, if that's what they want to do, they want to be completely outside of their comfort zone. I don't know, whoever you want, Lord, to minister in Karamoja, would you be calling? Would you be confirming? Would you be speaking, Lord, to those people? Lord, as a church, missions, I'm a missionary. I love missions. I love going outside of our four walls, even beyond just the other side of the street. I have a heart, Lord, for the world. And so, Lord, however you want to use our fellowship for that, in Mexico, in Africa, in other places where we have missionaries, Lord, in places we haven't been to yet, Lord, would you make us a church, Lord, that goes? And so, Lord, raise missionaries from within our fellowship. Maybe that's what needs to happen next. You're going to raise somebody to go. We need to send somebody to Entebbe or to Karamoja, Kampala. I don't know. Lord, you do what you want to do with our fellowship. I just pray that we would be those that get to a point, as Drew was saying, where we end up with nothing, in at least in our options, to where we say, Lord, this is what you want us to do. And so, Lord, have your way with us. We thank you. We love you, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. God bless you.